Hello guys, this is Brian Tubbs coming at you with another video. Today I'm going to be standing up the piece that we call stacks. I'm just going to be mounting this lower portion to the base, and I guess mounting a sculpture to a base is not a really big deal, but there's just in this video, with this sculpture having a point on it, on the bottom, comes to a point. I just want to show you guys how we mount that type of sculpture to a base. You know, because people oftentimes ask me, how do you mount a sculpture that sits on a point to a base? And if you don't use a gusset, you know, for added strength to that sculpture, how does it stand on that point? Well, there's a little trick to it. We don't actually mount the sculpture to the point. We cut a slot in the sculpture, and then we set the point down in that slotted opening, and then we weld the sculpture to the base. Because just welding that point to this base, it wouldn't have much strength at all. And even if we added a gusset to it, it still wouldn't be as strong as we would like it, because you get a bunch of winds and people pulling on them, kids trying to climb on them. Eventually that weld could break. So that's why we came up with the idea of setting ours down into the base. I have not seen any other artists do anything like that, but I'm not sure if they understand metal like we do. But just for safety, we just, like I say, cut the slot and set the sculpture down in. And the way, when we first started doing it, my wife and I, we would, just figure, okay, this point is probably 1/4 of an inch thick. So what I would do is we would get everything marked out. I would cut a 1/4 inch line through here with my plasma cutter. I make it could be like 2 passes. I'll make a 1/4 inch line in there. Then we would take the sculpture, set it on the base, and of course that would not be deep enough, so then we'd have to calculate how much more we would need, and then I would go through and go from say 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch. I'll make the opening a little bit wider. Take the sculpture, set it back on there, move it around, and we would step back and look at it, and she would say, nah, this doesn't look deep enough. So I would go back, cut another, 1/8 of an inch out or so, go back, and it's still not enough. So we would go back and forth probably 10 times trying to get the sculpture set in there right. And on average, after we get our final cut in, we would set the sculpture in. She would be on the ground with a marker, and I would have the sculpture inside of the base. And that's not just this base, but like sculpture reaching is the same way. I'm gonna swing you guys over just for a second just so you can see it. Okay, so if you look at the sculpture reaching, it sits on a point. But as you can see, it's sort of down in the base. It's not just sitting right on a point, but you can see it's sitting somewhat down in that base. So reaching, a tipping point, the sculpture stacks, they all are kind of set the same way. But as you can, now you know that it's not sitting right on a point, it's down in there. And with reaching, we use a gusset on the backside. But with the sculpture stacks, we don't. Let me swing you guys back around. All right, so now you know one of our other secrets as far as how we mount the base. Now, so what we do now, and like I said, since on average, after we finish measuring and cutting and measuring and cutting, it was on average between 3/4 of an inch and an inch of, I guess, width of that that slot that we would cut in. Because the way so after we figured that on average it's 3/4 to an inch depth that we needed, what we do now is, as opposed to cutting a 1/4 inch, testing it, another 1/4 inch, testing it and all that, we just come up to the sculpture and we'll measure up about 3/4 of an inch. So that's right about there. And so since it's right there, I'll take my ruler now and go in, and that's coming out to somewhere around 3/4 of an inch width right here on this portion right here. Hope you guys can see that. So if it's about 3/4 of an inch up and 3/4 of an inch in this area here, I know that my slot needs to be cut at, somewhere around 3/4 or just above, just a little bit more, maybe than 3/4. So it'll be like what, 13 16ths, somewhere around 13 16, somewhere in there. But I'll just cut it right around 3/4. And then if I need to widen it a little bit, I'll just take my flat disc and just widen it a little bit, just smoothing it out and kind of widen it a little bit. But I will know I'm close on that first cut. So I'm not having to go back and forth, picking this thing up. And like with reaching, it will be complete. So the upper portion is really heavy, and I'm having to pick this thing up, move it, set it up back on the ground against a table, go back and make the cut, pick it up, put it back on there again, on and on and on. So we have to come up with a better way. So now we just measure from this point down, and we'll measure from that edge to this edge to get the width that we need, or the width of that. And then we'll measure the sculpture this way. So in this case, it'll be like 8.5, somewhere in there. So I know that I need to make this slot 8.5, or whatever the width of that sculpture is down there. I need to go this way, whatever that width is. If it's 10 wide down there, then I'll make the slot 10 inches wide by 3/4 or an inch or whatever we need, depending on how tall the sculpture is. And depending on if we're using a gusset or not, it just depends. With reaching, the gusset looks good because it's just a continuation of the piece going up. But with stacks, it won't look as good because of what stacks is doing. It's just, pieces going up attached to each other as they go up. Reaching is more, I guess, kind of more of a completed sculpture the way it's set up. And this one's more just kind of stacked, just kind of doing its own thing. So that's how we mount sculptures that come to a point into a base. And a lot of our sculptures will do this because it's kind of our design, or it's kind of a trademark on what some of the sculptures we do. And so what I'm gonna do now, guys, is just show you just how I do it. So I already have a mark here. Hopefully you guys can see that mark. I will take the sculpture, measure it out. I will center it in here as much as I can. And then I know, just based on the other sculptures we've made like this, that's going to be somewhere around 7 inches from this upper portion to the center of this sculpture here. So I know I want that center somewhere around 7 inches from this top lip. So what I'll do is I'll just come over, mark it In this case, it's 6 3/4. So I'll put a mark here, move it over, put a mark here, and a mark here, just 3 points. Get a straight edge, come across with a marker, make a straight line there, and then I know it's going to be, 8, 8.5, 9 inches, whatever it is. I'll measure from this edge to here, and I'll center that, where we want to make that slot. Then I know that I want it to be a 3/4 inch slot. I'll go from this top line and I'll measure down 3/4 of an inch, and I'll make a mark here, a mark here, a mark here. Get my straight edge, come across with my marker. And I normally use a permanent marker. I was marking in, but I use, so my permanent marker is underneath this white chalk. But I just didn't think you guys would be able to see the permanent marker well enough, so I went over the permanent marker with my white soapstone chalk, just so you can see to it better. And so now I know that I'm pretty much centered, and I know that this is, for the most part, wide enough. I might have to make an adjustment to it, which is fine. So now I know I'm close. And like I said, it used to take an hour, sometimes more, to mount a sculpture to a base on a point. Now, if I wasn't shooting a video, I would have this thing done in 15 minutes, something like that, if that, because I know exactly how to do it now. And so what I do next is get the plasma cutter and just cut my slot out, set this on the ground, and do a test fit. And if I need to come back and make an adjustment, I will do that. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and fire up the plasma cutter, and get my face shield and gloves on, and I'm going to show you guys, basically how I do it. All right, guys, here we go. So I'm gonna pierce the hole first. Dragging slowly. Okay, so I got the upper. So let me go down to this lower one. And I always do a test drag, just to be sure that I'm fairly close on here. And when I see sparks flying up, I know that my travel speed is too fast, so I have to slow my travel speed down. All right, let me do my vertical cuts now. might be deep enough to knock this out. I'll just get my hammer and tap it. Yep, it's good enough. And so now what I'll do is I'll just get my grinder and just kind of smooth that out just a little bit. All right, here we go. Okay, so now the next thing I do is I take it from here, I'll set it on the ground, get it, fairly level on the ground, take the sculpture piece, stick it in the hole, and just see if I feel comfortable, with that, with the position of it being in there. And if I feel that it's gonna hold up and be strong and all that kind of stuff. So let me go ahead and put this on the ground and be right back. Okay, now that the piece is on the ground, I mean, it's not overly necessary that I, level it out. I put my level on it and I just try and center, the bubble as much as I can, because if it is where I want it in here, I don't have to take it back up and out, to have to level it. So I just kind of do a pre-leveling, before I put the piece on here. So let me just kind of see what's going on here. And what I'm using are flat disc pads just to kind of level it out. I have some on the floor here, and I'm using a pry bar just to kind of raise this thing up because it's so heavy. It's hard to grab it and pick it up. So I'm just kind of prying it up a little bit to try and level this thing out. So I'm gonna have to take one of these discs and kind of bend it to get it to fit up in there, because it just wasn't high enough with this being flat. So I'm gonna put this back on and add another one to the top of it. So I do the same thing with the front. And sometimes there can be like contamination on here, like a piece of weld spatter or something that can throw everything off. So I'm gonna flip it over to the other side and just see. Something is slightly off, because I know it can't be that far off. As this is saying it's about a 1/4 inch off, and that's hard to believe, but I guess I'll listen to my level, see what it's actually, if it's telling the truth or not. ahead and break this one. Just have to be patient with these things. Sometimes they'll line right up and sometimes they won't. But I'm getting there. That's pretty close. And once I get it up, I can just kind of level it as it's going up. All right, so let me just go ahead and put the sculpture on, just see what it looks like. See if it needs to do any more adjusting. So all I do is just take it, set it in. And just like that, it fits in, and I'm satisfied with the depth of it. That gives me plenty to weld to, and now it's just a matter of from front to back, and just making sure it's going straight up and down. It's not leaning to one side or the other. But guys, that's how you do it. And let me, I'll just turn it to the side just so you can kind of see it from the side. And before I weld it, I'll just go and make sure that base is, you know, is completely level and everything before I weld it in. I'll just give you kind of a side view. So I just take it, and you can see as it goes in, how deep it goes down, about 3/4 of an inch. And so what I can do, I will make a determination on if I want to bring it back this way. It would just depend on how we decide to mount, you know, the upper pieces. I want it to be over the base. I don't want it too far forward, and I definitely don't want it, you know, too far back. So we'll just make that decision on, you know, exactly the angle we want, and then I'll just start just tacking it all over the place. And you know, once I get it tacked in, because with this piece, we get an idea of how we want to stack the other pieces going up. But then this piece has to be welded and mounted to this base before we can stack the other pieces up. But like reaching and the other sculptures we do, we don't have to do this. We can, after we finish those completely, we'll mount it to, you know, to the base. And with this base being kind of awkward, you know, with it having this just extreme slope on it, it's not difficult, but it's not the easiest sculpture or base to mount a sculpture to, because you have to take into consideration that it's sloping. You don't want your sculpture falling forward. You don't want it too far back. So it's you know, it takes a little time to just kind of think it through. but it's not biggest of deals. And if I take this, lean it forward, I can take my hands off of it because it's sitting down deep enough where it locks itself in. Whereas if it was, you know, say a quarter of an inch in or a half inch in, with a half inch it would still kind of lock itself in, but it be a little bit easier for it to come out of here and fall forward. And of course, if it's a quarter inch, it won't hold up at all. So with that being about a 3/4 of an inch down, it can hold itself up. And so the way I do it is once I find the sweet spot for balance, I'll tack it in, and then I'll completely weld it in, and then I'll go underneath the base. I'll take it and flip it up, and I'll weld from underneath as well. So I'm getting, you know, added strength from underneath there. And if I was gonna add a gusset to it, I'll just get my cardboard, trace it, and get the metal and, you know, and make the gusset. But in this case, with this sculpture, we normally don't use a gusset. So it'll be pretty much just mounting it, welding it up from the bottom, and then start stacking, you know, going up. And then bottom of this, on the bottom of that sharp edge down there, there's a hole down there for drainage. So remember, every sculpture you do, you make a drainage hole someplace on that sculpture, you know, to eliminate the moisture if you get rain in there or if you get condensation or whatever. So there is that condensation drain hole down there. All right, guys. So that's how we do it. That's how we mount a sculpture that comes to a point, to a base. This is a secret that we use, and I'm giving it to you guys. So when you make your sculptures and you bring them to a point, or however you do them, you'll know how it's done. All right, guys. So I'm going to sign out, and hopefully see you on the next video. And as usual, peace out.